going to get this agent to crash into the bar. Now, without dynamics, he'll just walk straight through it. We'll bring on an output node. We type dynamics.active, switch it to 1, and now see what happens. Okay, well that's not quite what we want either. So obviously we can hook up some brain to control when dynamics does become active, and a good time to become active would be when he makes contact with the bar. Let's get an input node and type in it root:collide. Now if we watch the value of this when he does collide, well, first we'll turn off the dynamics again, we'll see that it's giving us a number that corresponds to the depth of the collision. We could also just use collide, which would give us any collision rather than the root node collision. And let's plug that into our output node and see what we get now. Okay, well, we're getting a collision triggering the dynamics, but the dynamics still look a bit strange, and that's because the joint angles are not constrained to sensible values. Now it just so happens that we've already set up in the degrees of freedom for each segment sensible limits, and all we have to do now is click on the background to select the agent parameters, select dynamics, and then under rotation limits we can set a force that will be used to keep the segments within those limits. So the force that we had there before just wasn't strong enough. Let's try it again. Okay, that's much more realistic dynamics. Okay, and there's some other things that we can adjust, such as the friction. If we set the friction to 1, which is its maximum value, then we can see what we get. So the joints are now much less flexible. They'll still stay within their limits, but within the limits they have friction applied to them. Let's try that off again and see the difference. A little bit looser. Alright, what about the collision force? Well, let's turn that down a bit and see what happens. Seems to be passing through the floor. If we view clipping, we can see just how much he's passing through the floor, and you'll notice that he also passes partially through the bar. Take a closer look at that. Now, we need to have a better value for the force here. Let's try 2000. Now we've got much more realistic collisions. And the damper value is sort of controlling the bounciness of the collisions to some degree. And collision friction, well, let's try switching that off and see what we get. Okay, now it's like he's on ice. And probably a value of 40 is sufficient here. Alright, maybe I'll set it back to 100. Yeah. Drag, what does that do? Well, let's try setting it to a value and see what we get. Now it's as if he's floating in thick liquid. It's kind of like slow motion, but it's actually because the atmosphere is now exerting a great deal of drag on his body. I'll switch that off. Gravity, we can affect gravity. Gravity would normally be 981 centimeters per second, but if we set it to 98, let's see what we get. Alright, there's a lot less gravity now, so the other forces are more prevalent than gravity. It's kind of like slow motion. In this case it's not quite like slow motion, but it pretty much should be. I'll put that back to what it should be. And the steps, well, if we have a low number of steps, we've got more efficient computing, but we may get slightly wiggy behavior. His arms are sort of spazzing out a little bit now. And in fact, if we go even lower on the number of steps, take it down to 500, it just goes completely unstable and the dynamics blows up. 2000 is a pretty good number of steps per second for a humanoid agent. can get pretty smooth motion and it can run almost in real time. In this case, let's knock it back to 1800 because then it will run in real time. But let's say we want to adjust the dynamics for just one bone. Well, we can shift click on his leg and then we can adjust the dynamics for that independently. You'll notice all these inherit buttons. If we switch off inherit for the rotation limits, we can then disable that by turning it down to 0 for just the right lower leg, which will mean that his knee now is unconstrained. And indeed, it bends backwards. Let's just put that back to normal. Now, any of these forces can be switched on and off globally with edit dynamics. We can change terrain collisions, and if there is no terrain, he'll just collide with the ground plane. Oh. And we can switch off agent collisions. So even though the collision is still detected in the brain, it doesn't affect the dynamics now. And self collisions, when he falls on the ground, now his arms and his legs will just pass through each other. Rotation constraints, that's the forces that we set up to obey the limits. We don't have any springs, spring collisions, and drag we could switch on and off if we wanted to. And when we save the agent, then all of the dynamic settings are saved along with it.